Доброго дня, шановні українські журналісти.
Good afternoon, dear Ukrainian journalists. You all see what's going on around you. The sixth day of the Ukrainian people's war against the invaders continues. They came to our land to kill our people and destroy our cities. Despite the fact that Putin attacked with the entire Russian army in Ukraine, Ukraine did not give up and did not fall. And it made a huge impression in the whole world. You can see that Ukrainian diplomacy has launched a flywheel of pressure on the Russian Federation, and this flywheel is already turning into a skating rink which will strike the Russian economy, Russian business interests in the world, and opportunities for all those who support the war. And it will make them all suffer. They will suffer from the fact that they supported President Putin's madness. But what has happened in recent days, and especially this morning, takes the confrontation with Russia to a new level. Rocket attacks on Kyiv, Kharkiv, and other Ukrainian cities, the murder of our children, the suffering of our children in basements and hospitals. All this allows us with every right to launch one clear signal around the world. If anyone is Russian, so it means he's a barbarian. I appeal to each of you, journalists, politicians, people, to use all your contacts so that everyone in the world knows about it. Now the whole world admires Ukraine. They admire the great Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian President Zelensky. In response to the evacuation proposal, he replied that he did not need an evacuation but ammunition, and he would not go anywhere. This has always been the case in Ukraine. We have always united in the most difficult moments for our country, and we always felt such power that we did not feel in our everyday life. And the world has seen it and appreciated it. And so now the impossible has become possible. For decades, Putin was a bandit who intimidated dozens of countries, and let's be honest, they were afraid of him. They were looking for an approach to him. They had endless phone conversations with him, flattered him, allowed him to make money. But in fact, everyone wanted to put him in place. However, no one dared. No one felt enough strength. And Ukraine felt it. And today Ukraine was the first to overcome this psychological barrier. Through our struggle we have shown the world that Putin can and must be beaten for his crimes and his behavior. And it is necessary to beat everyone who was close to Putin, helped him in every way and created the illusion that he could destroy Ukraine and throw the world into the darkness of war. I know very well what the assessment of our partners were on the eve of the war, how they treated Ukraine, Russia and the conflict in Donbass. I know very well how the world felt about the first 24 hours of this war. Many expected us to fall, to be broken. They sat and watched. They thought we could not stand it. In one of the influential countries of Europe, our ambassadors was told with a smile, "Why help your country if you will fall just in 24 hours?" But when the Russian occupiers began to receive a clear blow and resistance, it became clear that Ukraine is not only standing but also successfully repelling attacks. The world seems to have changed. Everyone who was afraid of Moscow, everyone who was flattered by Moscow, experienced a psychological breakdown and forgot about fear. To make this happen, our armed forces did a lot. Everyone who could stand up with a weapon did it to defend Ukraine. But the Ukrainian diplomacy, led by President Zelensky, has also done a great deal. These days we work without any pauses, without any breaks for rest, without spending a single minute without action. We are working to turn these feelings in the world into distinct steps of support. Sometimes my colleagues call me. In the first days they also called and expressed their condolences. I told them openly, "I do not need your compassion, I need sanctions, weapons and complete isolation of Russia. You can express your compassions to someone else." And thanks to our openness, calling things by their names, these days the hammer of tough sanctions has struck Russia and the supply of money and weapons to the heroic Ukrainian people has started. The people who were not afraid to challenge the Russian Goliath. While our heroes are beating the enemy in every piece of Ukrainian land, Ukrainian diplomacy is conducting a full-scale attack on Russian position in the world and on the Russian economy. Together with our partners, we have already begun the process of total isolation of Russia and total collapse of its economy. A separate area of work is attracting large-scale military assistance. Right now, as we speak, weapons, ammunition, military equipment, fuel are already flowing to Ukraine in a continuous stream. This strengthens our defenses, our ability to fight the invaders until we expel them from our land and suppress any ability of Russia to pose a threat to the world. We are on our land, we are defending it, and this is a justified nation's war. By all indications, it is already obvious that Putin broke his teeth on Ukraine, but I will be honest with you without any heroism, Putin has not broken completely yet. He's still looking for a military way out of this conflict, looking for a military outcome for himself. That is why he throws more and more forces to us, orders his troops to fire on civilians and residential areas, and rages against ordinary people. All these facts are recorded, every war crime is being recorded. We will make all these crimes accountable in international courts to those who committed them and gave out criminal orders. But it will be later. Now we need to persevere, and that's the main thing. It is necessary to grit your teeth, no matter how difficult it is to stop the bombing, and not to lose faith in victory. The enemy is already broken, he is already stuck, and his morale is rapidly decreasing. Inside Russia, there is a shock because of a sharp drop in living standards and because isolation. This creates anger, but we must rely only on ourselves, only on our own strength. We must remember that Ukraine and the Ukrainian people have gone through terrible trials throughout their history. But it turned out that Ukrainians are invincible, and this decisive battle which we are now waging for ourselves, for our existence, it must be victorious, and I'm convinced that we will definitely win, which is due in part to the fact that we have opened a second diplomatic front. The world is united and putting pressure on Russia, from heavy sanctions to decisions of individual companies and businesses to stop all activities with the Russian Federation. This is our second diplomatic front, which supports us, which allows us to continue the struggle. I will briefly list what we have achieved on this diplomatic front as of March the 1st. Yesterday definitely was a historic day for our country. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky signed an application for Ukraine's membership in the European Union. A number of European countries have already called for Ukraine's immediate membership in the EU. And now, right now, is the same historic moment to use this political decision to knock the last ideological foundation off Putin's feet. I am convinced that this decision will be made and we will stop it until it's made. President Zelensky's historic speech in the European Parliament today in the European Parliament's resolution in support of Ukraine's membership in the EU are the walls we have torn down, and which opens the door to a world of security and prosperity. Now, about large-scale military aid. I can't tell you everything, but this is the absolute #1 priority for Ukrainian diplomacy now. To protect Ukraine, a large amount of assistance continues to come from partners, from bulletproof vests and helmets to anti-aircraft and anti-tank missiles. Diplomats, together with the military, are working to strengthen the air force of Ukraine by supplying combat aircraft. I have to say frankly, but even 30 hours ago, I doubted that we would succeed. But we have already succeeded. And these decisions are already in the final stage. I can't name all the positions and the countries they come from. I do this for security reasons. I will name some without reference to countries. Javelins, anti-aircraft missiles, anti-tank, grenade launchers and ammunition, assault rifles, helmets, personal security equipment, a large batch of Stinger missiles. All this will strengthen our defense in the coming hours. Well, we cannot fail to mention some historical cases that will show you the truly unprecedented level of support that now exists from partners. That force of the second diplomatic front that we opened. Sweden is a neutral country for the first time since 1939. It provided us with military assistance. The last time it did so was when the Soviet Union invaded Finland. Since then, Sweden has never handed over its weapons to anyone. But for the sake of Ukraine, Sweden has changed the rule. Finland also gave us a large consignment of military aid. Norway is next. Norway has made an exceptional decision in support of Ukraine, moving away from the policy of non-provision of weapons to non-NATO countries as a war. Also, Oslo sends us 2,000 anti-tank grenade launchers. Luxembourg is a small but proud country providing Ukraine with a batch of modern anti-tank weapons. Neutral Austria sends helmets, protective vests. In addition, we managed to agree with our partners on the supply of thousands of tons of fuel for Ukrainian equipment. We have every reason to continue the struggle. We must continue to resist. Nothing should break us. Vladimir Putin's system will be the first to break. Secondly, painful sanctions and complete isolation of Russia. You read the news and see Moscow's international isolation intensify. Everything Russian became toxic in the world yesterday, and today it has become barbaric, as I said at the beginning. Large companies are massively terminating contracts with Russian business, closing offices in Russia, closing shops, restaurants, closing access to global services. In fact, what is happening now is the Deputinization of the world. The international anti-Putin coalition is hitting the Russian economy one blow after another. I'll tell you frankly, not every blow is given out easily. It is necessary to work, to press, to persuade. We have to show heroic pictures of our resistance, the dead. Not everything is simple, but so far everything is working out. We believe that all these steps against Russia are absolutely just. The Russian Federation deserves it, and we demand increased pressure and isolation until Putin stops his war against Ukraine, stops hostilities, withdraws all troops and repays for what he has done. Until he does, we will continue to work to ensure that Russia has earth burning under its feet in every sense. We are now pushing the swift disconnect to its maximum capacity. I have already reported that the decision in principle have been reached. Only a few details are left to be worked out. And that is indeed what we are working on right now. The disconnection of Russian banks from SWIFT should happen in the short future. We demand a complete embargo on bloody Russian oil and gas transit. The first decisions in this direction have already been taken by Canada. This wave will continue to grow. New sanctions have already been announced by the US, the EU, the UK, Australia and a number of countries. For the first time in history, Switzerland has joined the EU sanctions and did it to stop the war in Ukraine. Those who had previously remained neutral and now fighting alongside Ukrainians against the Russian invaders. Asia used to be careful, now it is joining the anti-Putin coalition as well. Singapore imposes restrictions that include export controls, sanctions against Russian banks and air traffic controls. Our partners are also dealing crushing blow to Russia's central bank. In particular, the European Union and the US have done so. Canada has banned all financial institutions from carrying out any transactions with the Russian central bank. The blow is so painful that it actually blocks more than half of Russian reserves. Monaco will also impose sanctions against the Russian elite, identical to the EU restrictions. The US expels 12 Russian diplomats to increase pressure on Russia. All Western services stop running for ordinary Russians. Credit cards stop processing. Now there is no Netflix or Amazon. Yesterday one of my colleagues, a foreign minister from Europe, called me in the evening to tell me a story about how one Russian rich man could not pay for the hotel in his country because his cards had been blocked. He tried to make a scandal out of it, demanding justice. But the justice for him had already been delivered in the form of sanctions. The ruble went off the stable mark and flew. The sky, on the contrary, closed, and Russian planes do not fly there now. The sanctions have already dealt a painful blow, and unfortunately, though I'm not sorry, absolutely every Russian will feel the consequences of these sanctions in one form or another. So far, Russians are in shock, but time will pass and that shock will turn to anger. A few words about humanitarian aid. Humanitarian aid is coming to us from all over the world. We have already received shipments from France, Slovakia, Switzerland, India, Estonia and Lithuania. Last night, United Kingdom has sent the first shipment of medical supplies to Poland. In total, London has allocated £40 million of humanitarian aid. This is only a small part of the aid given to us by friends all over the world. But this humanitarian aid will be extremely important because we already see that Russia is barbarically destroying the civilian infrastructure, the supply chains. It is doing so in order to cut off access to water, food and basic social services for Ukrainians. We, Ukrainian diplomats, will do everything we can do to bring the maximum amount of humanitarian aid to Ukraine. We care not only about the soldier being armed, but the peaceful Ukrainians were provided with food, medicine and clean water. With each shelling of a Ukrainian city or village, Russia goes further along the path of isolation itself from the world. The number of states that have closed their airspace to Russian aircraft has expanded. Just recently, Albania joined them. In addition, Russia is now threatened by massive port closure and maritime restrictions. The United Kingdom is working on a legislative solution to keep Russian ships out of British ports. Russia has already lost most sports and cultural events. It is being expelled from sports associations. Its national teams are deprived of the right to compete under the national flag. The European Language Union declared that no Russian artist will take part in this year's song contest. International Football Federation and European Football Association have decided to suspend Russian clubs from participating in competitions under their aegis. The international anti-Putin coalition is working. Ukrainian diplomacy provides reliable rear for our military. Today, I instructed all our embassies, all our general consuls abroad to do so simple things. The first is to work on the three key tasks of diplomacy in this war: weapons, sanctions and humanitarian aid. But the second one, and our diplomats will also find time for this, they must work on the deputinization of the world. Weed off Putin's agents, Putin's vision of politics, economics, business from everywhere. I'm convinced that this is a matter of honor for our partners. It is a matter of consciousness and morality to support us in this endeavor. With such courageous warriors and such support from the world, we will force the invaders out of our land. I said it at the beginning, for Ukraine this is a real national war, and Putin will never be able to break us. We will stand until victory is achieved. Sometimes journalists, ministers, foreign colleagues wondering, do I believe in Ukraine's victory? I don't just believe in it, I'm absolutely sure of it. Glory to Ukraine. And now I'm ready to answer your questions. What can we expect from the next negotiations round, and should we expect more airstrikes after each one round?
На жаль, авіаудари потрібно очікувати в будь-який момент.
Unfortunately, you have to be ready for airstrikes at any time. As for the negotiations, we are now analyzing what happened yesterday. The stated positions have been declared. The President is fully informed down to the smallest detail about the course of the conversation that took place yesterday. We will outline our position later and then, if necessary, we'll prepare for the next meeting. But we believe that such a meeting is necessary, because Ukraine believes in diplomacy and we are ready for a diplomatic solution to this conflict. But under no circumstances we will go for the negotiations if the Russian Federation uses it only to voice its ultimatums. Negotiations are negotiations. We will talk and look for solutions, but we are not going to obey any Russian ultimatums or whimsy claims. What will happen if they seize Kiev, and will Ukraine be able to defend itself without capital?
To the Ukrainian government, if the Russian army takes Kiev, can Ukraine continue fighting without its capital?
А можна я українською відповім? Перекладуть потім собі. Дивіться, ну, по-перше, не треба нас ховати.
Well, first of all, you don't rush to bury us. You've been trying to bury us since the first hours of this war. We are still alive, we are fine, we are working and controlling the situation. The President and the Prime Minister have retained full control of the country. Second of all, I want to reiterate my point. This is not a war of the Russian state against the Ukrainian state. This is Putin's war against the Ukrainian people. The Ukrainian people cannot be defeated. No matter how long it takes, we will always win.
Скільки б це не зайняло часу, ми завжди переможемо.
Does Ukraine believe a no-fly zone is worth the risk of a direct NATO-Russia conflict, and whether Putin's threats to use nuclear weapons will raise doubts among Ukraine's Western partners?
Зробили західних партнерів більше сумнівів в підтримці України.
Я не бачу сумнівів у західних партнерів. Ми розуміємо, що наразі президент Путін вдається до шантажу.
I don't see any doubts around Ukraine's Western partners. We can see that Putin is now using nuclear blackmail.
Що стосується зони заборонених польотів, ну, дивіться, ми ж ведемо...
It is absolutely unacceptable behavior. It violates international rules and conventions.
Гинуть наші люди,
As for the non-fly zone,
наші пілоти.
well, we are waging this war ourselves, with our own physical forces.
НАТО для
Our people are dying, our troops, our pilots,
Але все, що НАТО може зробити для того, щоб підтримати,
and we don't invite NATO to fight instead of us. This is our land. These are our territories. But everything that NATO can do to support Ukrainians in this war is, I believe, not only a moral obligation, but also a matter of political expediency.
допомогти нам тут, в Україні, ніж чекати, коли ви реально опинитеся в
Because they understand that if we, God forbid, go down, they will be the next. So it's better to help us here in Ukraine than to wait until you actually find yourself in direct conflict with Russia.
Україні з протиповітряною обороною.
There are different solutions to help Ukraine with air defense, and we are working on these solutions with our partners right now.
Будь ласка, залякувати. Ще раз наголошую, не треба залякувати.
But please do not intimidate us. Once again, do not intimidate us by saying that allegedly NATO will be at war with Russia because of Ukraine.
Якщо Росія тут, в Україні, переможе,
If Russia wins here, you will be next. NATO.
ви зараз можете бути впевнені на 100%, що цього не станеться.
You can be 100% sure that this won't happen, but before that you were sure that Russia would never attack Ukraine. Were you?
Були?
Yes, you were.
А вона взяла і напала.
And here it is, Russia did attack. So it's better to help us fight here. This will guard our lives here and your security.
А вам вашу безпеку.
Thanks for attention.